My badge stopped working at 9:12 on a Friday morning, 4 minutes before Ross called me into conference room B and told me my position had been eliminated. He said it like he was reading weather. Strategic realignment, headcount reduction, tough quarter. The HR woman beside him kept both hands folded on a manila envelope like it might run away if she loosened up. I was 34, 6 years into warehouse automation, and carrying more bills than patients. My divorce had been final for 8 months. My daughter Lily had braces now. My mother's cardiology balance was on a payment plan with my name on it. So when Ross slid the separation packet across the table, I did not have the luxury of righteous speech. I was doing math. 3 months earlier, I had finally solved the problem that had eaten almost 2 years of my life. A docking latch that let our inventory drones land crooked, catch themselves, and charge anyway. That sounds small until you have watched $100,000 in prototypes bounce off charging rails because warehouse floors are never as level as the slides in executive meetings. I built that latch from scratch. Legal pad sketches, late-night CAD revisions, burned fingertips from bench motors, a plastic bin full of failed arms, and cracked guides I kept under my desk, because throwing them out felt like lying about how long it had taken. I also mirrored every design revision in a private Git repo on my own machine, not because I was planning for war, because our PLM system had eaten a month of notes the year before, and I never trusted it again. Commits, photos, test videos, material changes, failure logs. Everything went in. Ross told me to return my laptop, my lab key, and the blue prototype case from Bay 4. That was the first thing that made my stomach tighten. The blue case held the latest latch assembly, the one we were supposed to present to Counsel next week before the quarter-end filing push. Ross did not know that. Justin did. When I came out of the conference room carrying my box, Justin was already standing by the lab benches in his clean gray quarter zip, one hand on that blue case like he had been waiting for it. He gave me a look that was almost sympathetic. Almost. Tough timing, he said quietly, but at least I can keep the project moving. I remember staring at him because it was such a strange sentence to say to a man who had just been laid off. Then he lifted my prototype case and walked it toward the engineering director's office like it had always belonged to him. By the time the elevator doors shut behind me, I knew the layoff was not the only thing that had been scheduled for that morning. At 8:03 Monday morning, Priya texted me a screenshot that made the whole weekend snap into place. Internal patent queue, provisional draft 26-041 self-centering capture, latch for autonomous inventory, drone docking inventor, Justin Hale. Just one name. I read it 3 times sitting at my kitchen table in the same sweatshirt I had worn through half the layoff paperwork, and each time my body reacted before my brain did. First heat, then cold, then that strange, flat calm that only happens when something is so deliberate it stops feeling like an accident. Priya had been the firmware lead on the doc team for a year before they moved her to another program. She was not dramatic. If she sent something, it mattered. Her second text was worse. Submitted Sunday, 6:14 p.m. Ross wants it in front of the board before end of month. The title alone was enough. Nobody else in that building had spent 2 years solving the off-angle docking problem. The claim language was mine too. Self-centering capture latch was a phrase I had written in a design note after prototype 7 started catching at 3 degrees left and missing at 3 degrees right. I opened the old project deck on my personal drive and found the version I had exported 2 weeks earlier. Page 14 showed the latch exploded into 7 labeled parts. My name was in the footer. Priya sent me the internal screenshot again, cropped wider this time. Same diagram, same labels. Footer removed. That was when Friday stopped looking like budget cleanup and started looking like timing. I called Ross, straight to voicemail. I emailed HR from my personal account. They replied with a canned line about all company inventions remaining company property and reminded me not to retain confidential materials. That told me 2 things. First, they were going to pretend I was arguing ownership. Second, somebody was betting I did not know the difference. I was not trying to take the patent away from the company. I was trying to stop my coworker from writing me out of the part where I invented it. I went into my office, sat down at the desktop I had paid for in monthly installments, and opened the mirrored repo I had not touched since Friday. The first commit on the docking latch was 22 months old. Justin's name did not appear anywhere in the first 14 months of work. I spent the next 4 hours living backward through 2 years of my own work. Every version was there. The first ugly CAD sketch with the latch arm too short. The second one with the aluminum lip that shaved itself to dust in the cold room. The weekend video where the drone hit the dock, slightly off-center, bounced, and took a camera off on the way down. I had labeled that file never underscore again, .mp4 at 11:48 p.m. My repo was not just code. It was the whole trail. Commit hashes, exported CAD files, bench test clips with timestamps burned into the corner. Photos of prototype serial numbers, meeting notes, and the little angry comments I left myself when a material choice failed twice in the same way. Rev D widened throat by 3 millimeters. Guide pin steel instead of nylon. Dual spring geometry finally catches at 4 degrees. Those lines were almost embarrassingly specific, which was exactly why they mattered. The patent Q screenshot Priya sent listed a filing abstract. I copied it into a document and started matching phrases. Floating guide throat, mine from a February design memo. Off-axis capture under warehouse vibration, mine from a test summary after Bay 3 rattled hard enough to loosen 2 fasteners. Self-centering, mine again. By noon I had a timeline longer than some police reports. Date, revision, failure mode, fix, witness, file name. Then I found the detail that made me sit back in my chair. Justin's name first appeared in my repo history as a meeting attendee, not a contributor. Month 14. He had joined after the worst part was over, when the problem had gone from impossible to merely difficult. He was good in meetings, that much I will give him. He could stand in front of a slide and say "we" in a tone that made people forget who had actually spent Saturday breathing melted polymer in the lab. He was not in the cold room video. He was not on the first successful doc. He was not in the failure logs where the actual invention happened. Priya called me around 1 and said Justin had already been walking people through the filing like it was a routine paperwork step. Ross is telling everyone this was always Justin's project, she said. Like you only handled the testing. Testing? I looked at the folder on my desktop labeled doc_latch_evidence and realized something hard and clean. If I sent this to the wrong person, they would bury it. If I sent it to the right person, Justin was finished. Then Ross finally replied and asked if I wanted to clear up confusion on a call at 3. Ross got on the call with HR and Justin, which told me immediately this was not a clarification. It was containment. Ross did that executive thing where he'd lowered his voice to sound reasonable. Evan, I think you're mixing up personal ownership with company IP. I'm not, I said. The company can own it all day. That has nothing to do with who invented it. There was a half second of silence after that. Not long, but long enough for me to hear HR stop typing. Justin jumped in fast. We collaborated on the mechanism. He said, I drove the final architecture. That line would have almost impressed me if I had not been staring at 22 months of proof that he was lying. You weren't there for the first 9 revisions, I said. He gave a small sigh, the kind people use when they want the room to think they are the adult. Evan, this is exactly what I mean. You're upset, totally understandable, but trying to relitigate lab ownership after separation is not good for anyone's reputation. There it was. Think about your reputation. Threat wrapped in concern. Ross followed it with the institutional version. This is just how filings work here. The lead engineer closes the disclosure. Legal doesn't need every contributor. Contributor? I wrote the word down on a legal pad because I wanted to remember the exact insult. Then Ross shared his screen, meaning to show me the disclosure summary, like it would calm me down. Instead, he gave me something better. The filing attached a slide deck exported Sunday night at 7:02 p.m. The diagrams were mine. The failure sequence was mine. One slide still had speaker notes in the margin. Mention Evan's old Rev C issue, only if asked, my old issue. That was the moment I stopped hoping this was a sloppy corporate mix-up. Sloppy people do not rewrite authorship notes and scrub names on a Sunday night. HR started reading from the separation agreement, probably hoping legal language would exhaust me. I let her finish. Then I said, if Justin conceived the invention, he can explain why Rev B failed before it ever reached a drop test. Nobody answered, because there was no Rev B drop test. The part warped in the thermal chamber 12 minutes after power-up. Only the person who lived through it would know that. Ross ended the call by telling me not to make accusations I could not support in writing. That night, I went looking for the email I had almost sent before they laid me off. I found it in my drafts folder at 11:48 p.m. Thursday, time-stamped less than 10 hours before Ross called me into conference room B. Subject line, inventorship concern before disclosure submission. I had written it after Justin asked me for the 3rd time in a week to simplify the inventor list. That was his phrase, simplify. Like authorship was clutter. In the draft, I had laid out everything that had been bothering me while I was still trying to convince myself I was being paranoid. The Sunday meeting invite I was suddenly removed from. The slide deck he had re-exported without my footer. The way he kept referring to my latch as the team's docking concept whenever directors were in the room, and your geometry whenever he wanted me to fix something broken. Most important, I had attached comparison screenshots. On one side was my original invention disclosure worksheet with Evan Cole listed as inventor and Justin blank under contributors pending review. On the other was the version Justin sent back 2 days later with my name removed and a note in the margin. Legal prefers one clear inventor where possible. Legal had never said that. Marta had once told me the exact opposite. I had not sent the email because Thursday night I was tired, under deadline, and still dumb enough to think doing good work would protect me better than making noise. Friday morning they laid me off. Sunday evening Justin filed. Monday afternoon, Ross told me not to accuse anyone in writing. I just sat there for a minute staring at my own draft and feeling something shift permanently inside me. Until then, I had been trying to prove I invented the latch. Now I could prove something uglier. They knew there was an inventorship problem before I was terminated. They just thought removing me from the building would make it easier to finish. I forwarded the draft, the attachments, and my repo timeline to a fresh folder on my desktop. Then I searched my old contacts and found Marta's number. She had been the company's patent paralegal for longer than half the executives had worked there. She was the one who once told me, over stale conference room cookies, that inventors get lazy about paperwork right up until someone tries to steal their idea. I texted her one line: if a company files a provisional with the wrong inventor on purpose, who actually panics first? She called me back in under 3 minutes. Marta did not ask how I got her number on a Tuesday night, and she did not waste time pretending this was small. Outside counsel, she said. Management will posture. Outside counsel will count risk. I told her I had commit history, prototype photos, unsent emails, and an internal screenshot of the queue. Good, she said. Now stop narrating it like you're hurt and document it like you're the only sober person in the room. That was Marta. She could turn a panic attack into a checklist. She told me exactly what outside counsel would care about: conception dates, reduction to practice, independent witnesses, drafts of the invention disclosure, and any proof that someone had been told the inventor list was wrong before the filing went out. Don't send a speech, she said. Send a record. So I built one. Page 1 was a timeline. Page 2 was the claim language matched to my dated design notes. Then came commit exports, photos of prototype serial numbers, bench videos with timestamps, Friday's layoff paperwork, Thursday's draft email, and the side-by-side disclosure screenshots Justin had tried to blur into procedure. I added a short cover note that said exactly what Ross had been avoiding. This is not a dispute over company ownership. This is a notice of false inventorship regarding provisional draft 26-041. I sent the packet to Ross, the company legal alias, and the outside counsel address Marta gave me for Dana Lewis, copied from an older prosecution thread. Then I printed the whole thing and paid too much money to overnight a hard copy because people lie more easily when they think the evidence only exists on screens. Ross replied first. This is inappropriate. Do not contact outside vendors directly. He did not say I was wrong. Dana replied 20 minutes later. Received. Reviewing. That was the first professional sentence anyone had sent me since Friday. That did not sound like an attempt to blur the issue. Around 9 that night, Priya forwarded me one more document. Internal only. Justin's written summary for legal. The first paragraph looked polished. The second paragraph told a story about the prototypes that never happened. Justin's summary would have fooled anyone who thought engineering happens on clean slides. He wrote that the latch breakthrough came after Rev B drop testing exposed lateral instability in the aluminum arm. That sounds smart if you do not know the part in question softened in the thermal chamber and never survived long enough to be dropped from anything. He wrote that he proposed the dual spring capture geometry during a September architecture review. I had a bench video from August 14th with the exact geometry, zip-tied to a plywood dock, my voice behind the camera, and Justin somewhere off-frame asking if the guide throat needed to be less pointy. He wrote that the final nylon steel interface was his cost-down suggestion. My repo had a February commit labeled "Stop listening to Justin Real Nylon Pin," followed by photos of the shredded test part that proved why. I printed his summary and started marking it up in red like an angry teacher. Lie, impossible date, wrong failure mode, wrong material, not present. It was almost insulting how much of the theft relied on the assumption that lawyers would never ask technical follow-up questions. Ross called me at 7:30 the next morning, sounding less confident than before. "You've made your point," he said. "There's no reason to keep escalating this." That sentence told me two useful things. First, I had not made my point yet because nobody had corrected the filing. Second, he was finally afraid of the exact thing he kept calling confusion. I said, "Has Justin withdrawn sole inventorship?" He paused. "No, because we're still evaluating facts." Good, I said. Then we're still escalating. He tried one more version of the same old threat. Burning bridges, future employers, needlessly adversarial. I let him talk until he ran out of softer words for dishonesty. 10 minutes later, Dana emailed both of us. I need a joint call at 10 a.m. Bring all source materials supporting conception, design progression, and reduction to practice. Source materials. Not feelings, not reputation, not office rank. Justin had spent 2 days acting like the inventor because nobody had made him sit still long enough to prove it. At 9:58, I opened the folder with the cold room video, the serial number photos, and the first drawing where the latch throat widened by 3 millimeters. If Justin wanted the patent, he was finally going to have to describe how the invention actually came into existence. Dana opened the call like a surgeon opening a tray. No small talk, no executive throat clearing, just names, roles, and a sentence I still appreciate. I'm not here to manage feelings, she said. I'm here to determine inventorship. Ross went quiet after that. Dana started with Justin. Walk me through the earliest failed prototype that led to the current latch. Justin answered fast, which is how confident liars usually sound right before they run out of road. He talked about a drop test, lateral instability, and a redesign for manufacturability. Clean phrases, zero fingerprints. Dana turned to me. I held up a photo of prototype DL02. Timestamped January 11th. The nylon lip visibly warped after 12 minutes in the thermal chamber. It never reached a drop test, I said. It failed under heat before we could even evaluate impact. The change was not manufacturability. It was survival. Then I showed her the bench video from August 14th. Plywood dock. Off-angle approach. First appearance of the widened capture throat and floating guide. My voice walking through the geometry change. Justin in the background asking whether we should paint alignment marks on the housing because he still did not understand what the guide was doing. Dana asked Justin who assigned the DL serial numbers. He did not know. She asked which revision first used the steel pin. He guessed wrong. She asked why the filing abstract used the phrase self-centering capture throat. I pulled up a February commit and a saved draft email where I used that exact phrase 3 weeks before Justin first put it in a slide. He tried to recover by saying it was a team effort. Dana did not even blink. If it was a team effort, she said, why did you submit a sole inventor disclosure? Justin looked at Ross. Ross looked at Dana. Nobody looked at me. Then Dana asked the question that ended it. Mr. Hale, other than presentations, what is the earliest dated document showing your conception of the claimed mechanism? He had nothing. Nothing polished. Nothing real. After 9 seconds of silence, Dana said she was freezing provisional draft 26-041 pending inventorship correction and internal review. The call ended at 10:41. At 11:07, Priya texted me one sentence. Security just badged Justin out. Ross called me before noon with an entirely different voice. No talk about confusion. No comments about reputation. Just clipped corporate damage control. We've paused the filing, he said. Legal will be issuing updated paperwork. With the correct inventor? I asked. A beat. Yes. I made him say my name. He hated that part. By 1 o'clock, Dana had emailed a formal notice confirming the provisional would not proceed under Justin's sole inventorship, and that the company was reviewing whether he belonged on the filing at all. Priya sent me a second update from inside. Justin's access was gone, his desk drawers were boxed, and Ross had locked himself in a conference room with legal for most of the afternoon. That still was not enough for me. A frozen lie is better than an active lie, but it is still a lie until the record changes. So I replied to Dana with the one thing I wanted in writing: corrected inventorship, amendment of my separation file to reflect ongoing cooperation on the patent matter, and compensation for the disclosure I was forced to defend after termination. For once, the company moved fast. Marta texted me that evening. Told you the panic starts with Counsel. The next morning, Dana sent a draft correction package. Justin was off the inventor line completely. I was listed as sole inventor. Ross also wanted me to sign a narrow settlement, additional severance, reimbursement for counsel review, neutral reference language, and a clause saying the company owned the patent rights, but acknowledged my inventorship without dispute. That was all I had ever been fighting for. Not the company, not the product, not even the money, though I took it. I wanted the official record to stop pretending the loudest man in the meeting room had done the hardest part of the work. Priya called after lunch and said the board patent metric had been delayed, Justin was officially terminated for falsifying submission materials, and Ross had lost authority over future filings until process improvements are complete, which which was corporate speech for having his hand slapped where people could see it. Then Dana sent the updated PDF. For the first time all week, the inventor line read exactly one name, mine. When you spend 2 years building something, you think the hardest part is making it work. It is not. The hardest part is watching someone try to take the history out of it and realizing how much of modern work depends on whoever gets to the paperwork first. The corrected filing hit my inbox on Friday afternoon, 1 week after they had walked me out. Same title, same diagrams, same company name at the top. But the inventor line was mine and only mine because Justin had never actually conceived anything he could defend under a real question. The company still owned the patent. That part never changed. Dana made sure the acknowledgement did. My separation package was reissued with extra severance and a consulting clause in case prosecution counsel needed technical clarification. I took the money, turned down the consulting work, and used the first quiet Saturday in months to take Lily for pancakes without checking my phone between bites. She asked if I had gotten fired for real or one of those fake grown-up reasons. I laughed harder than I had all week. Both, I said. What I did not tell her was that the part hurting me most had never been the layoff. Companies do layoffs all the time and call them strategy. What stuck in my throat was the idea that 2 years of nights, missed weekends, burned fingers, and stubborn work could be folded into somebody else's promotion deck if I was not loud enough. That part I understand differently now. Work does not stop being yours because someone senior says we. Truth does not become procedure because HR repeats it slowly. And the quiet guy in the lab is only invisible right up until somebody asks for dates, files, and the first version that failed. A month later, Priya sent me a photo from the pilot warehouse. One of the drones was locked into the charger using the latch Justin tried to sign his name over. I looked at it for a long time, not because I missed the company, because it is a strange feeling to see something you built still doing its job after people tried very hard to erase the fact that you built it at all. If you want more stories where the quiet guy kept the receipts, subscribe and like. It helps more than you think.